The champagne flute feels lighter than it should. The conversation flows. The laughter comes easily. And somewhere in that room, someone is watching you. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because you just became interesting. There is a place where intelligence gathering happens that most people never suspect. Not in the back rooms of embassies. Not under the harsh light of an interrogation. Not through encrypted channels or dead drops in shadowed alleys. It happens in full view. Under chandeliers, with string quartets playing softly in the background and waiters gliding between clusters of well-dressed strangers. MI6 has long understood something that others overlook, the most valuable. Intelligence is rarely extracted. It is volunteered. And it is volunteered most freely when people believe they are simply enjoying themselves. A cocktail party is not what it appears to be. To the guest, it is an opportunity, a chance to network, to be seen, to make an impression on someone who matters. To the intelligence professional, it is a laboratory. Every handshake is data. Every joke is a window. Every silence between words carries weight. The room itself becomes a mechanism engineered not with wires and microphones but with atmosphere, with subtle gradations of status and access, with the promise that tonight, in this elegant space, the rules are lighter than they are tomorrow. The guest arrives hoping to gain something. They do not realize they are already giving it away. The genius of these environments lies in their informality. Hierarchy dissolves at social events in ways it never does in offices or boardrooms. A junior diplomat feels emboldened after 2 glasses of wine. A businessman laughs too loudly, eager to seem relaxed among powerful people. A researcher, flattered by attention, explains their work with more detail than they would ever put in writing. The setting whispers, permission. It says, you are among friends. It says, this does not count. And because it does not seem to count, people forget to protect themselves. They forget that everything counts. Alcohol is the least interesting part of this equation, though it plays its role. What matters more is charm. What matters is the careful construction of ease. An intelligence officer does not interrogate at these gatherings. They do not even steer. They simply create the conditions under which people want to speak, want to impress, want to be understood. A well-placed compliment. A question that sounds curious rather than probing. A laugh at the right moment. The officer's goal is not to extract a confession, but to be remembered warmly. To become someone the target looks forward to seeing again. Someone who listens with real interest when others only half attend. Trust is not built in a single night, but the foundation is poured in moments like these. When defenses are low and egos are high, the room divides itself naturally. There are those who talk too much, hungry for validation, revealing affiliations and frustrations and private opinions with startling speed. There are those who listen carefully, who ask more questions than they answer, who skim the room even as they nod along to a story. There are those who watch from the edges, nursing a single drink for an hour, measuring everyone. And there are those who seek importance, who drop names and hint at access, who want to be seen as insiders. Each type is useful. Each type reveals something. The intelligence professional does not need to do much. They simply need to observe, to remember, and to recognize patterns that others miss. No recruitment happens at these events. No propositions are made. No envelopes change hands. That is not the purpose. The purpose is assessment. Who is ambitious? Who is lonely? Who is underpaid or overlooked? Who speaks bitterly about their employer after the 3rd drink? Who seems eager to be valued in a way they are not currently valued? Who watches the powerful with envy or admiration? These are not secrets. These are vulnerabilities. And vulnerabilities, once identified, can be cultivated over time in other settings, in quieter conversations, until a person arrives at a decision they believe is their own. Nothing at these gatherings is accidental. The guest list is curated. The seating, if there is any, is strategic. Even the timing of introductions matters. An intelligence service does not attend social events to socialize. It attends because these rooms concentrate access, ambition, An indiscretion in a single space. The guest believes they are there to advance their career, to make connections, to enjoy an evening among interesting people. They are not wrong, but they are not entirely right either. They are there because someone wanted them there, and now that they have arrived, they are being studied with a patience and subtlety that would be invisible even if they knew to look for it. The trap is not something you fall into. It is something you walk into willingly, smiling, glass in hand, believing you are exactly where you want to be. By the time you realize the room was never neutral, the observation is complete. You have already shown them who you are. And in the world of intelligence, that is all they need to begin. The moment someone feels important, they begin to speak differently. Their sentences grow longer. Their voice rises slightly. They lean in with authority they did not have 10 minutes earlier. This transformation is subtle, nearly invisible. But to someone trained to observe human behavior, it is everything. Intelligence work at social gatherings does not rely on pressure or manipulation. In any crude sense, it relies on something far more reliable: the human need to be recognized, to be valued, to be seen as significant by others who appear significant themselves. And once that need is activated, people do the work for you. Ego is not a flaw in this context. It is a gateway. Every person who enters the room carries a version of themselves they wish to project. The accomplished professional, the connected insider, the person who knows things others do not. They arrive hoping to reinforce that image, to have it reflected back at them by the right people. An intelligence officer does not need to challenge that image. They need only to validate it. A single phrase can be enough. I've heard excellent things about your work. You seem to understand this better than most. I imagine you're one of the few who actually knows what is happening behind the scenes. These are not flattery. They are invitations. Invitations to expand, to demonstrate, to prove the compliment true. And most people accept without hesitation. Alcohol is often misunderstood in these settings. Its purpose is not to intoxicate. Its purpose is to soften the editing process. Sober, people rehearse their words before they speak. They calculate what to share and what to withhold. They maintain the small but critical distance between thought and expression. With a drink or two, that distance narrows, not dramatically, not in ways that would embarrass them or make them obviously careless, just enough that they speak more freely, laugh more openly, offer opinions they might ordinarily keep to themselves. The brilliant part is that no one feels compromised. They feel relaxed. They feel sociable. They believe they are still in control, and technically, they are. They are simply controlling less than they think. Social hierarchies, so rigid in daylight, become strangely porous at night. A mid-level official finds themselves standing beside someone far more senior. The proximity alone creating a sense of equality that does not exist anywhere else. They begin to speak as if they belong in that circle. They offer insights, share frustrations, name names. The powerful person nods, appearing interested, perhaps even impressed. The mid-level official does not realize they are auditioning. They believe they are networking. They believe they are making a connection, and they are, just not the kind they imagine. What they are doing is revealing their access, their dissatisfactions, their ambitions, and their judgment. All of it volunteered, all of it recorded not on tape, but in memory, filed away for future reference. The intelligence professional watches all of this with a particular kind of attention. They are not looking for secrets yet. They are looking for tendencies. Who dominates conversations and who defers? Who name drops reflexively? Who becomes animated when discussing work and who becomes vague? Who speaks bitterly about colleagues or institutions? Who seems eager to be liked by strangers? These are not small details. They are psychological portraits, and over the course of an evening, those portraits become remarkably complete. The officer learns who is frustrated, who is undervalued, who craves recognition, who resents authority, who feels overlooked despite their talents. These vulnerabilities are not immediately exploitable, but they are cataloged. And when the time comes weeks later, months later, when a quiet approach is made in a different setting, the officer will already know exactly which emotional strings to pull. What people volunteer is always more valuable than what they hide. A secret, once discovered, is a single piece of information, but a tendency, a habit of thought, a pattern of behavior. These are predictive. They reveal not just what someone knows, but how they think, what they need, and how they might be moved. At these events, people compete without realizing it. They compete for attention, for validation, for the sense that they matter to the people who matter. And in competing, they reveal themselves completely. The person who interrupts to correct a fact, the person who laughs too eagerly at a superior's joke, the person who pulls someone aside to share something they clearly should not. None of this requires coercion. It requires only the right environment and the certainty that everyone else is doing the same thing. No one is questioned at these gatherings. There is no need. Questions imply suspicion, and suspicion destroys the atmosphere. Instead, people are simply encouraged. A slight tilt of the head, a murmur of interest, a pause that invites them to continue. Most people cannot bear a conversational silence. They fill it, and in filling it, they give away far more than they intended. The intelligence officer does not push. They do not guide. They simply create space, and human nature does the rest. The irony is that the target often leaves the evening feeling successful. They made an impression. They were listened to. They connected with someone important. They do not realize that success, in this context, may be the most dangerous thing of all. The room hums with voices and laughter and the soft collision of glass against glass. The lighting is warm. The music is unobtrusive. Everything appears as it should. But beneath the surface, judgments are forming. Not moral judgments, operational ones. Who is worth approaching again? Who has access to something valuable? Who is discontented enough to be cultivated? Who speaks carelessly when they feel safe? By this point in the evening, the assessments are nearly complete. The guest believes they are still deciding whether the night was worthwhile. They do not realize the decision has already been made about them, and the trap, such as it is, was never something they could see. It was the feeling that they were finally being understood. The conversation ends, not abruptly, not rudely. It simply finds its natural conclusion. The intelligence officer smiles, nods, and turns towards someone else. The exchange was pleasant. Nothing memorable was said. Nothing uncomfortable occurred. And yet, in that moment, a decision has been made. The person left standing there, holding their drink, does not know it. They will wait for a follow-up that will never come. They will wonder, briefly, if they said something wrong. Then they will forget. This is how exclusion works in intelligence environments. It is not announced. It is simply enacted through absence. Not everyone in the room is of interest. Most are not. They are background, context, atmosphere. They serve a purpose by being present, by filling the space, by creating the illusion of a normal social event. But within that crowd, certain individuals are being watched with intent, and others are being quietly dismissed. The distinction is invisible. There is no marker, no signal, no moment of rejection. There is only the withdrawal of attention. An intelligence officer who spent 10 minutes in animated conversation with someone may pass them later in the evening without acknowledgement, not out of malice, simply because the assessment is complete. The person has been categorized, and the category, in this case, is not useful. The cruelty of this system, if it can be called cruel, is that it leaves no trace. The dismissed individual does not feel dismissed. They feel unremarkable, perhaps, or unlucky with timing. They assume the officer was busy, distracted, engaged elsewhere. They do not realize they were tested and found wanting. And because there is no confrontation, no explanation, no clarity, they cannot learn from the experience. They simply move on, unaware that they were ever under consideration in the first place. This is deliberate. Intelligence work depends on silence, not the silence of secrecy, but the silence of non-response. It is one of the most effective tools available, and it costs nothing. For those who remain under observation, the dynamic shifts in ways they rarely detect. Attention is not increased, it is maintained. The intelligence officer does not seek them out again that evening. They do not press for another conversation. They simply allow the possibility to linger, a brief glance across the room, a slight smile when their eyes meet, nothing more. Others grow cold, interpreting the distance as slight, and withdraw entirely. This, too, is a failure. It signals ego, defensiveness, and inability to tolerate uncertainty. The ideal response is neither. It is calm, patient, socially fluent, but not desperate. It is the ability to remain engaged with the room without fixating on a single interaction. Most people cannot manage this, and in failing to manage it, they disqualify themselves. The irony is that most people believe they fail by saying too much. They worry they were too open, too eager, too unguarded in their earlier conversation. But that is not usually the problem. The problem is how they react to being ignored. Do they press for attention? Do they sulk? Do they overcorrect in the opposite direction, becoming stiff and formal? Each of these reactions is informative. Each one tells the intelligence officer something about how this person handles rejection, delay, and ambiguity. And since intelligence work is built on all three, these reactions matter far more than anything said earlier in the evening. The person who can sit comfortably with uncertainty, who can tolerate being overlooked without becoming brittle or needy, is the person worth approaching later. Everyone else is noise. Selection in this environment happens quietly. There are no announcements. No one is pulled aside and told they have been chosen or rejected. The process is entirely internal to the observer. A mental note, a name remembered or forgotten, a decision to make contact again in a different setting, or to let the interaction fade into the background of a half-remembered evening. The target is never informed. They are simply subjected to the consequences of the decision, which may take weeks or months to manifest, or may never manifest at all. This is not cruelty. This is efficiency. Intelligence services do not owe explanations to people they assess. They owe results to the institutions they serve. And results depend on selecting the right people, which means filtering out everyone else. By this stage of the evening, the room has divided itself into categories that only the intelligence professional can see. There are those who have already been dismissed. There are those still under observation. And there are the rare few who have, without knowing it, passed. They have shown access, ambition, and vulnerability. They have demonstrated emotional control and social fluency. And somewhere in that room, someone is walking away believing they made a good impression, unaware that the most important judgment has already occurred. They will leave tonight thinking the evening was pleasant but inconsequential. They will not realize that their name is now in someone's memory, attached to an assessment, waiting for the right moment to be acted upon. Or perhaps they will leave believing they failed to connect, unaware that they succeeded in ways they cannot yet understand. Either way, the outcome will not be announced. It will simply unfold, slowly, in settings they do not control, guided by decisions they never saw being made. And the trap, by now, is not something they can escape. It is something they have already walked through, without ever noticing the door. The party ends. The guests gather their coats, exchange final pleasantries, and step out into the night air. Some leave exhilarated, convinced they made valuable connections. Others leave deflated, certain they missed an opportunity or said the wrong thing. A few leave indifferent, viewing the evening as nothing more than an obligation fulfilled. None of them know which group they truly belong to, and they never will, because the final outcome of these gatherings is not communicated. It is simply filed away. A decision made in silence, and the person it concerns is never informed. This is how intelligence selection completes itself, not with clarity, but with withdrawal, not with answers, but with the permanent absence of them. There are no follow-up calls, no emails confirming interest or politely declining further contact, no second invitations to more intimate gatherings for those who have been dismissed. There is simply nothing. The intelligence officer who seemed so engaged, so genuinely interested in their work, does not appear again. Weeks pass, then months. The person begins to assume it was coincidence, that the officer was merely being polite, that the connection they thought they felt was imagined or misread. They are correct about the last part. They did misread it, but not in the way they think. The connection was real. The assessment was real. The judgment was real. It simply went against them. And because no one tells them this, they move forward without ever understanding what occurred. They were tested, measured, and rejected, all while believing they were simply attending a social event. This is the elegance of the system. It operates entirely beneath the threshold of awareness. For those who passed, the experience is equally opaque but opposite in consequence. They, too, hear nothing immediately. No confirmation, no praise, no indication that they were anything other than one face in a crowd. But then, perhaps 6 weeks later, perhaps 3 months later, they receive an invitation. Not to another cocktail party, to something smaller, a lunch, a private conversation, a meeting framed as professional courtesy or mutual interest. They accept, flattered, curious, unaware that this invitation is the outcome of a process that began the moment they first entered the room. They do not realize they are being recruited. They believe they are being consulted, valued, brought into confidence. And in a sense, they are. But the terms were decided long ago by someone who watched them when they did not know they were being watched. By the time the conversation turns, by the time the real ask is made, they have already been shaped by months of subtle conditioning. The refusal, if it comes at all, comes too late. The relationship has already been established. What makes these events so effective is precisely what makes them so invisible. There is no coercion, no deception, no moment where the target is confronted with what is happening. There is only observation, patience, and the careful exploitation of human nature. People want to be valued. They want to be seen as important, knowledgeable, connected. They want to believe that their presence matters. And in wanting these things, they perform for an audience they do not recognize as an audience. They compete for attention they do not realize as a test. They reveal themselves in pursuit of validation they were never going to receive in the way they hoped. And when the evening ends, they walk away believing they were simply socializing. The intelligence professional walks away with a complete psychological profile, a judgment about utility, and a plan for how to proceed or not proceed. The imbalance is total, and it is invisible. Approval is never announced. Rejection is never explained. The person who leaves the party, convinced they failed, may have succeeded. The person who leaves convinced they succeeded may have disqualified themselves entirely. There is no way to know. And this uncertainty is not an accident. It is a feature. It ensures that those who are eventually approached cannot trace the origin of the approach back to a single event, a single conversation, a single night. It ensures that those who are never approached cannot identify what went wrong, cannot adjust their behavior, cannot try again. The system protects itself through opacity, and it protects the intelligence service by ensuring that most people never realize they were ever under consideration. They simply lived their lives, attended their events, and unknowingly auditioned for a role they did not know existed. This logic extends far beyond espionage. It exists in elite spaces, in circles of power, in rooms where access is carefully guarded and membership is never openly discussed. The same principles apply. The same observations are made. Who speaks carefully and who speaks recklessly? Who seeks validation and who projects confidence without needing it reflected back? Who handles ambiguity with grace and who becomes anxious in the absence of clarity? These assessments happen constantly, in boardrooms and private clubs and carefully curated gatherings. And the people being assessed almost never realize it. They believe they are networking. They believe they are building relationships. And they are. But the relationships are not equal. One side is deciding. The other side is hoping. And hope, in these environments, is the weakest position of all. The trap was never the party itself. The trap was the belief that the party did not matter. The trap was the assumption that informal spaces are neutral, that charm is harmless, that being interesting is the same as being safe. It is not. Every word spoken in those rooms is data. Every gesture, every laugh, every moment of hesitation or overconfidence contributes to a judgment being formed by someone who will never tell you what they decided. And the most disturbing part is this: the judgment is often correct. People do reveal themselves when they feel comfortable. They do become careless when hierarchy dissolves and alcohol flows and the atmosphere suggests that nothing serious is happening. They show exactly who they are, and someone, somewhere, is taking note. The evening ends, the room empties, the glasses are cleared, and the next morning, nothing has changed, except that somewhere, in a mind trained to remember, your name sits next to an assessment. Useful or not useful, vulnerable or guarded, worth pursuing or worth forgetting. You will never know which. You will only know that 6 months from now, or 6 years from now, someone may approach you with an opportunity that feels like fortune. Or they will not approach you at all, and you will never understand why. Because the decision was made on a night when you thought you were just having a drink.